This is The Basketball Show with Shane the Hammer Heel. What they gonna say next?
Hey team, this is The Basketball Show. Joe and Hammer with you as always. Now, we were going through the rundown earlier. It's kind of like our pre-game meeting each week. And boy, oh boy, there is a little bit to get through this week.
There is. First thing is, I've got some feedback. Too much activity with the pen. It's not stopping.
I
love the pen.
I genuinely have not noticed.
That's okay.
It's probably, I notice
That's
I
how I
speak
roll.
with my pen though.
Yeah, point. You point.
I point with it. I point
Like
with
my
it.
wife. It's all good.
All right, it is all thanks to TCL Mobile, 2K23 and UPCOZ, and of course our broadcast partners Kayo and News Corp. Let's get into it with our TCL starting five. Well, first of all, we've got to give a shout out to Isaac Humphries. Last week, of course, he came out as being gay. It was incredibly brave. It was a really powerful message to people to just be themselves and embrace who they are. So I think it's definitely worth mentioning again. I know, as I said, it was last week, but it was really special and a great moment for him, for Melbourne United and for the league.
How well did he speak?
Yeah.
Seriously, when you're talking about, your own dark places and what you've gone through and everything else, the way he articulated what he's been through, his feelings, and being able to send that message to the world was really powerful. And, I'm just happy for him that he is in a good place and he sent a message to other people that hopefully can feel as comfortable as what he is, and he's got that platform to be able to do it. But it still blows me away in 2022 that this is still a courageous thing to do.
Yeah.
That's what surprises me more than anything else. And hopefully people like Isaac that take those steps can send a message to other people that it's okay to be yourself and you will get big hugs. And he's been rewarded all around the world, which has been the best thing. He's been put on a platform, and from the NBA to Europe to everywhere. And there's always going to be some haters. There's this small minority of our community that still have no idea. But,
there certainly weren't any at the game against Adelaide the other night. I was there, and he timed his announcement knowing that he was playing against Adelaide, his former team. So current teammates, former teammates, some of Adelaide's sort of wives and girlfriends and families came over for it as well. It was a really, really nice occasion. Unfortunately, they didn't get the win, which is what we'll move into next, because Melbourne United back-to-back losses over the weekend. Of course, they went down big time in the throwdown as well. Marcus Lee made his debut against South East Melbourne, 17 minutes, 2 points, 0 from 2 from the field though, and 2 rebounds. Is he the answer that they needed?
It's hard to tell early. I mean, when you hit the ground running just off the plane, you're trying to learn everything and learn the league and everything else. It's difficult. So we've got to give him a little bit of time. But they've got some other problems in that team that I've said from day one. I just don't feel like the mix of their import combination in the backcourt is the right mix for whatever reason. It just doesn't feel like it's gelling. And sometimes those individuals, Rattan Mays looks good and everything, but sometimes for whatever reason it just doesn't work. And I didn't feel like it worked at Illawarra.
Yeah, sounds like there's a little bit of tension perhaps in the locker room as well. So we'll see what happens there. Speaking of, George King also released by the Hawks.
Oh, injury, was it? Injury?
Part injury.
Did he get injured?
Injury. Don't do this
What?
to me. Part injury, partly because he wasn't really gelling with the team. It sounds like there was some things behind the scenes that were happening. No real surprises though. It seemed that they probably were trying to get rid of him perhaps before the season started. JR then went down in that first game injured, and the Hawks were almost at an end as to what they could do.
Well, I think you've articulated it very well, Jojo. But they've said he's out for the season, so we'll be interested to see where he pops up next, and the injury is all of a sudden resolved.
Yes. Shout out to the Hawks though. That game against Sydney, they're 2 imports down. They've had 7 losses on the trot. They were incredibly gallant. I thought it was an amazing performance from Tyler Harvey. Will Hickey had personal best sort of across the board in terms of scoring, rebounds, steals, time on the court. Unfortunately, didn't get it done, which leads into, I love this, Cardiac Kings. That's a Director Dave special.
That's what they were known as in the 90s, the Kings.
Was it?
Yeah.
I did not know that.
That's an old school. Well, you're too young, Jojo.
I'll take that.
What about Sean Bruce? What was better? the game-winning shot or the celebration just like that as soon as he hits it?
He knew it was
Which
coming.
one?
He knew it was
Which
coming.
one?
No, the celebration. That's up
Look
there.
at the celebration. Straight away, there you go.
Shout out Steph
99.
Curry.
99.
I can't believe they've done that 2 games in a row at Kudos Bank Arena, because obviously Quatnoi on his 25th birthday last time around as well.
That was huge. I mean, heartbreaking for the Hawks because you go that far. I only tuned in for the last couple of minutes and they had the game in control. And the Kings just find a way. You know, Sean Bruce had 8 points for the game, but he had 5 points in the last 30 seconds.
He really took control in that last 30
That's what he
seconds
does.
as well. That was his experience coming out, wasn't it?
And that's the depth of the Sydney Kings with veterans that don't need to take a lot of shots, don't need to play a whole lot of minutes, but when it counts, they can step up when their number's called. And he's done that for a couple of years. That's why he's been so valuable. But I felt for the Hawks coming in undermanned and really throwing their best shot at the Sydney Kings. And probably had every right to be able to win that, but the Kings just find a way.
The New Zealand Breakers, they are second on the table. 2 pretty tough wins in round 7. Tassie in Launceston, and then the 36ers at home 48 hours later. Modi Mayor said that Adelaide were in town 48 hours before New Zealand were. So he just said how proud he was of his group. He said, we needed our C game to beat their A game, and they came out and did it.
They're fast becoming my second favourite team in the league, New Zealand.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I just like what they do. That's why I picked them to finish second in our stuff last week and picked them last week. I just love the way they go about it. They don't have anyone trying to play hero ball. They're all committed on the defensive end, got a really even team. They back themselves. They've been well coached. They're playing with a whole lot of character and spirit at the same time to be able to get this done. And I just think they are a legitimate chance to really push come playoff time.
Yeah, imports really providing a spark, but also good contributions from across the board as well. All right, we best keep things moving.
Breaking all the big news in basketball with Matt Logue.
All right, time for the Logue down. Matty Logue in the house. Matty, the Hawks have lost 8 on the trot. The future of the organisation is now being discussed. What can you tell us?
Yeah, guys, big story, and it's been brewing for a long time now, but legitimate fears around the Hawks' future in Wollongong. The league for a long time have thought that region is too small. They need to expand beyond that. It's now been, I suppose, intensified because of the Hawks' start of the season. As you said, Joe, a losing streak, 1-9 to start the year, but also off the court. The last 2 years previous under Brian Gorge, and they got to the finals. There was a real legitimate rivalry with the Sydney Kings, as you saw yesterday. That was a bit of a throwback because the Hawks have struggled so much. But then I think on their jersey, you got 8 spots for sponsors, and only 1 spot is filled. So on top of their on-court performance being poor, they're not attracting big sponsors. Their crowds are down. My understanding, some of the crowds were bigger during the pandemic, which is a bit alarming. But as I said, the real concern around the Hawks, and watch this space, is that if it does not improve, the league cannot afford for the Illawarra Hawks to continue in its current state in a market which is just not big enough. And that's why they tried to get rid of the Illawarra name, and the fans voted to get it back. But I know you've got strong thoughts on this, Shane, because...
The league has spoken about this when they changed ownership, right? Because they talked about moving it as well. And everyone from the Illawarra blew up and said, you can't take the Hawks, they're a foundation team. And then they don't vote with their feet. The only time they get excited about the Hawks is when there's talk about relocation. And then you go down there and there's 1,800, 2,000, I don't know what they announce how many people there, but there's no one there.
So what's the solution?
Well, either vote with your feet, get there, build that franchise and show that you're growing, or it has to be relocated. I think for the sake of the league, Sydney had 11,000 people there. We know what Perth does. You know, sell-out crowds in Tasmania. Canberra want a team. There's so many regions that want a team, right?
Yeah, and you're right, Hawks fans will blow up. They're very passionate about their region, and fair enough.
Not passionate enough to go, though.
But they're not, and that's the problem, Joe and Shane, is that if that doesn't change, then I think it'll put the league in a situation where they're forced to act. And which is unfortunate because they're a foundation club, very successful in previous years, but at the moment...
Who's at the top of the list? Where will it get relocated if it goes?
And this is an interesting one, and it ties into my next subject on the lowdown, but a second Sydney team relocating the Hawks and expanding their reach within the Sydney region. Now, that'd really
Well,
piss the
I don't know
Illawarra
if that's
people
going to
off.
go down very well.
2026, there's a block out.
There is a block out, so we make that clear.
So we were going to get to this, but we may as well do it now. East Sydney.
That is the talk for a second Sydney team. The Sydney Kings, right? So
4 years.
Yep, so it's 4 years because there was a rule for everyone at home. There was a rule signed when the Kings re-entered under Harvey Lister that there wouldn't be a second Sydney team until 2026. Okay. Now, if there is another team, the Kings have got the West pretty much controlled now, and the East, the Kings' original home in Shane's glory years, that's where they're seriously looking at. Which, I don't know, you're a Kings legend. What's your thoughts? Like, will it work? Like, you know, you've also got that corridor of the Sutherland Shire, which they can incorporate, which is big juniors.
Yeah.
But that's the talk.
I think two teams in Sydney works. The rivalry, you have a look at every state, have a look at the AFL with the footy teams in South Australia and also Western Australia. The rivalry actually works. And you've got something to be able to build with here in Sydney. Location is the thing that makes it tough.
Yeah. Well, time will tell. Will be interesting, that's for sure. Got to ask you about Keanu Pinder and Cairns as well. He's averaging 18 and 10. He's absolutely balling this season. They're third. Yes, they're
Show
third,
me the money, baby.
They're third on the table, but he's playing himself into a bag,
Yeah.
which means that it's probably unlikely that he will be able to remain in Cairns
Impossible.
next season.
Impossible,
Yes.
Jojo.
Cairns are a small market, let's be honest, so it's very hard to keep players. But we can reveal that Keanu has been shopped around to other clubs. Other clubs have received contact in regards to Pinder, in regards to expressing interest in him as a player, in moving forward. You're technically not allowed to do it because it's for next year and there's a window. But at the end of the day, we all know that it's manager's job. They all do it. Everyone, really that is their job to get the best money for their player. But you're right, and within the I suppose the Taipans, they believe that it'd be very difficult to keep.
What sort of money are we talking
His
about?
value is definitely gone.
What sort of money are we talking about?
Well, okay, let's say Xavier Cooks, if he's on approximates around that 6 to 7, what does Keanu deserve?
He
based on his form?
wouldn't be far off that then.
Based on
1.5 over 3 years for Pinder in a good program.
Okay.
He would make an average program better straight away. But that's the
Absolutely.
sort of money they'd have to pay, surely.
Absolutely.
And it's normal. Like clubs and managers and this sort of unofficial discussion happens in the league. It's not supposed to, but it does. It's just the way it is. And teams have got a plan and agents and players are thinking ahead.
Absolutely.
That's the way it is.
Oh, good on him, I say.
Oh, well done to him. It's a shame for Cairns because they did a great job of finding someone that was really undervalued. And Forty's done a good job putting him in a position, helping him succeed. But then it's always hard. We've seen Glidden and McCarran, these guys that come through Cairns and have to leave.
Does it raise a question that where clubs like that need to be rewarded for developing talent? I get that they don't have the money because it's a small market, but is there an argument also that they deserve to be rewarded for developing talent?
To me, that's where teams that are paying a luxury tax should go to clubs like that then hopefully can put towards trying to keep somebody like Keanu. That's how it should happen.
Yeah, okay. All right, we've got to keep things moving. Crystal Gazing is coming up next. All right, time now to go crystal gazing. We'll bring in former NBL MVP Derek Rucker, who says that he owns Brisbane. He certainly does not own the crystal gazing leaderboard. That honour goes to yours truly this week. 19 points, Hammer. You're on 15. D, you're on 14. And Maddie, let's just
the king of
let's
Brisbane
just not talk about it.
owns the wooden spoon. And is that a dirty mo or is that a full goatee? My eyes are sort of going a little bit. But
Full
full
baby,
goatee,
full.
okay. Yeah.
Alrighty, guys, round out tips off on Thursday night. First of all, it's Perth hosting Adelaide. Hammer, who have you got?
Wow, this is going to be a great game. Perth won at home in their last game against South East Melbourne, but it was on the back of only the brilliance of Bryce Cotton. He was unbelievable. I thought South East Melbourne were probably the better team if you take the influence of Cotton out of it. I'm still going to go with him because he is so good, but this is going to be a cracking game.
Cairns take on New Zealand on Friday night. Third hosting second. D?
I'm just going to go back to that Perth game because Hammer has been killing Manic all season long. And then he doesn't acknowledge the great game the guy had last week in leading Perth to that victory. But anyway, I'm going to let that fly. I've got Cairns in this game. I think that they're starting to really put it together. They're getting all their people back. It's going to be a tough one. New Zealand had a great win yesterday, but I like the way Cairns are playing.
Matty, Melbourne United take on the Tassie Jack Jumpers Saturday. Both teams coming off back-to-back losses. Who have you got?
Yeah, I'll stick with Melbourne United. They haven't looked good, and either of Tassie, to be honest. But I just think United, they've got to win this game, and I think they'll win a close one.
First up on Sunday, Hammer, New Zealand taking on the Bullets. That's a tough road trip for Brisbane.
It certainly is. And they're 3 close games. And back to Derek's comments, he still only recognises points and still doesn't understand what defence and rebounding is for Manning. So we'll continue to break his game down in other compartments of the game. But New Zealand, I think New Zealand can win both games this weekend. I'm in love with them. I love the way they play. They've got great depth and camaraderie. I think they all play their role. I just think they're going to be too good.
Derek, the Illawarra Hawks are away from home. They're in Melbourne taking on the Phoenix in the second game on Sunday. Who wins that one?
Phoenix look a lot stronger. I thought they played well this weekend. Illawarra, obviously, the surprise game of the weekend and pushing the Kings right down to the wire. But I think that's probably their good game for the rest of this month. Southeast Melbourne blow these guys out in a landslide.
And Matty, Cairns take on Sydney on Monday night. The Taipans hosting a Kings side that will be pretty well rested. They've got 7 days off.
Yeah, and if Xavier Cooks is there, tip the Kings. But if he's not, I'm on the fence here, call me splinters, then I'd go the Taipans at home. But look, I think Cooks will be there and the Kings.
Hammer, do you agree?
I agree with everything he just said then. Xavier Cooks is so important to the Sydney Kings, and they've had lapses where they're not playing well, but their experience gives them a chance to be able to win close games even when they're not playing well, and that's the championship experience they bring.
Beautiful. Matty, thank you for joining us, Dee. We'll speak to you again in Points Made. Thanks to 2K23, we are going in depth with a basketball show exclusive now. We've got NBA draft analyst and scout Matt Babcock with us. Matt, great to have you on the show. Been looking forward to being able to pick your brain, but really appreciate you being on.
No, thanks for having me.
Matt, great to have you on. I've got an affiliation with your family. Your uncle, who sadly passed over the last couple of years, Rob Babcock, was very dear to me and instrumental in me signing with the Minnesota Timberwolves. But also your uncle Pete was the general manager at Atlanta and offered me a long-term contract. So I'm very grateful to your family that have been involved for a long time in the NBA.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I've been hearing your name since I was a kid, and I remember my uncle Rob. I believe he scouted you at the Olympics, and so you were a hot name in our family at the dinner table. And I didn't know the story about my uncle Pete offering you as well, but that's great. Yeah, we go way back.
You've got a new podcast at the moment talking about what you do, your varied career. You've been in the game for a long time. Can you kind of talk us through a little bit about that and also what you're doing day to day at the moment?
Yeah, so we just launched the Matt Babcock Show, which we're doing it through the Title League podcast network. And pretty much the show is sort of all-encompassing of all the different things that I've got going on and my background. As Shane mentioned, I grew up in basketball. My dad, my 2 uncles have all worked in the NBA my whole life. So we're 2 episodes in. The first one was just kind of background of my family and my upbringing, and then my professional career. I've sort of zigzagged around everything too. I worked as an agent for 10 years. I had a short stint as a developmental coach in Italy, a pro team in Italy. And then I've been in the media. I wrote for Sports Illustrated, and now I run NBA draft coverage for BasketballNews.com. And so as I'm traveling, scouting players, advising different people behind the scenes, I'm kind of just using this show and this platform to kind of peel back the curtain on my life in basketball.
Mate, can you tell us a little bit more about your dad? I think he's been at Milwaukee for an extended period of time, and he was instrumental in drafting Giannis. Incredible.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So my dad started working then. He was a college coach for 15 years. He got hired by John Calipari to the New Jersey Nets in 1996. And then 1 year later, he joined the Milwaukee Bucks front office, and he's been there ever since. He's had a number of different roles. At one point, he was the interim general manager. But yeah, and he was very influential in the team drafting Giannis. I remember he and I were both in Treviso, Italy, at the Euro camp, and he left the camp early to go watch Giannis play. And I remember he came back and he said, "Hey, there's this kid. He's really raw. He's long, plays hard. I think his upside's really high." And he went back to the front office and kind of put the full court press on him. And credit to his boss at the time, John Hammond. They pulled the trigger, and they really didn't have much information on him, so they rolled the dice, and it really worked out.
It's definitely paid off, that's for sure. I want to ask about a couple of young Aussies. We've had 2 first-round draft picks in the lottery, Josh Giddey and Dyson Daniels, over the last couple of years. I know that you've seen them and followed them on their journey. Have you been surprised by the trajectory and where they've sort of managed to get to in such a short period of time?
Yes and no. I mean, I think with Josh, the progression of his pre-draft year was pretty incredible. I mean, he was hot on the radar, but more as like a second-round pick, maybe late first, and he kept chipping away at everybody, and became mid-lottery pick. As far as his rookie season, I was a little surprised. I mean, obviously, the Thunder's team's rebuilding, so they're putting a lot of young guys out there and let them work through some things. So I think that's helped him quite a bit of getting to a spot to be comfortable, to make plays. He still has so much upside. I mean, he's 6'8", he's ambidextrous, he's a terrific playmaker, and I think that where the room for improvement is adding some physical strength and improving his outside shooting. So to see him do what he's doing already, and with some things to still work on, it's exciting to see. And then with Dyson, sort of a similar player, just a big, versatile perimeter player. He's not quite as dynamic as Josh, and he's not playing a huge role yet for the Pelicans. But he's sort of a Swiss Army knife. I think he can play 3 different positions on both sides of the ball. And I evaluated him a lot last year with the G League Ignite, and just very tough kid. Seems like he plays the right way, does things the right way, and so all indications are that he's going to continue to improve. And it's really nice to see. Both kids seem like really great kids, and I know their agent Daniel Moldovan pretty well too, and I'm really happy for all their success.
Mate, another young kid coming through the ranks is Tyrese Proctor. I've seen him since he was 14. He's a young Sydney kid. Exciting prospect now at Duke. Where do you see him going? Can you break down his game, and does he have the same sort of upside as what Josh and Dyson have?
As far as my personal evaluation process with Tyrese, it's just beginning, really. I mean, I've known who he is for a while, but I just saw him play for the first time in person last week, actually, at the State Farm Champions Classic in Indianapolis, when Duke played Kansas. And, his first couple games, struggled a little bit, turned the ball over, wasn't hitting shots. The game against Kansas, though, he had a few shots and had a few plays that were really intriguing. I mean, you can tell he's very naturally smooth. He's got great size. Looks like he's got the potential of possibly being a combo guard. And so, I mean, I'm actually going to see him again this next week in Portland. I'll see him twice, or hopefully I'll see him twice at the Phil Knight Invitational and Legacy tournaments. And I'm just really kind of keeping a pulse and seeing how he progresses. I do project him to be an NBA player at some point. I just don't know if it's going to be right now or in a year or two.
Are there any NBA players? Are there any NBA players that perhaps you can compare him to, and that you see him and you sort of say, okay, he reminds me of so and so?
I haven't come to a comparison with him yet. I don't have one off the top of my head, but yeah, big. The upside and the projection is a big combo guard that's a smooth shooting, scoring guard that could play on and off the ball.
Matt, are you surprised, considering in the 90s we hardly had anyone that could go to the NBA? Luke Longley sort of led the way after going through college, but we've had multiple first picks in the draft and now lottery picks. Of how much talent is coming out of Australia for such a small country?
Yeah, I mean, it's really impressive. And, the one thing is with the league there, and you know this better than I do, it has been good basketball for a long time. I think good coaching compared to other countries. And so I think that's probably the biggest factor, is that, basketball's popularity is relatively high there, and kids are getting solid coaching at a young age. And so they're getting a head start, compared to some of these other countries that start a little later. But it's really amazing. I mean, having these high lottery picks in multiple years, and and Tyrese seems to be the next one coming.
Matt, just one more before we let you go. I find sort of what you do really fascinating. I know that a lot of fans of the game don't often get to speak to people like you and what you do. What is the best part of your job? What's the thing that's the most satisfying and rewarding for you?
I mean, I like the travel and kind of chasing these players and trying to figure out the puzzle each year, right? I mean, it's you get all these rankings of kids in high school and at the youth levels, and the way I look at it is I trust myself as an evaluator. So I like I've been saying this a lot. I like getting in the trenches. I like traveling around and kind of grinding it out to figure out what these players are all about. And as I'm part of the process of sort of peeling back the curtain on their stories, it's really great to see when the kids succeed and when they succeed for the right reasons. And a lot of times my job is to be critical and point out flaws and weaknesses and things that guys need to address. And when they actually do it, it's rewarding for me very much.
Oh, it's been really awesome to chat. As I said, really fascinating, and we'll definitely give the podcast a listen. So again, really appreciate you being on the Basketball Show.
No, thanks so much. I really appreciate it.
Time for Points Made, thanks to UPCOZ. Now, Dee is still with us. Now, guys, I want to ask about the NBL review system and the Coaches Challenge. There's been a lot of talk about it. People perhaps a little bit perplexed by some of the decisions. Hammer, you said it's like the Fonz and that they can never admit to being wrong.
And my wife.
Talk to us about your thoughts.
Well, I love the Coaches Review. I think it's really added to the game. I guess I sit there sometimes and I'm blown away when you see the replays and you're like, oh, this is going to get overturned, this is going to get overturned, and it doesn't get overturned. A lot of people don't understand how it works. So the referee bosses are sitting in the hub in the next room that they adjudicate the Coaches Challenge, and they're also evaluating the referees. I feel like they're more likely not to overturn a call from the referees. It's a difficult one because I like the whole format. I think it would be better if we knew who was making the decision. Who is it in that? Which is the referee's boss that ultimately it comes down to that decision? Let's put a name to it, so then we can hold them to account as well. Dee?
I agree, and I think that would help also, Shane, by identifying who is actually in the referee center or the hub or whatever you want to call it, because then that adds another layer of information for the coaches about when they want to challenge, what that boss's mindset is when it comes to calls. Are they more pro block in a block charge situation? All that would add to intrigue. But also sometimes I don't think coaches make the right decision as to when to go and use their review. I would find it rare that I would ever use my review in the first half of a game. I just don't see the point of it. And, with them being so scarce, you only get one. That's the way it goes. I'm saving that thing for crunch time. They're more valuable in a sense than timeouts are. So I've got to save it. The only way I might use it in the first half is if one of my key players picks up a shaky call and might get a third foul. That's the only way I'm probably using it, Shane.
So guys, what about on the broadcast from a fan's point of view? Could you have a referee sort of there available to help people understand the decisions?
But if they're paid by the NBL, it becomes like the NBL commentary, right? The commentators aren't allowed to say the referees are wrong or talk about it because you get flicked on the nose straight away. So we already know that. I don't think a referee being there, because even with the NBA, I feel like they give nothing when they're coming on and protecting the other referees rather than saying how it is.
See, I don't necessarily agree with that either. I believe that it depends on the individual, just like the boss in the hub, and certain referees are going to be forthright in their opinion. They're not going to compromise their integrity. Obviously, you don't think referees have any integrity to be compromised, so
don't put words in my mouth. But do you get much from the NBA?
All these things.
Do you get much from the guy in the NBA, the referees? Because every time I roll my eyes.
I like one guy, Steve Javie, and he's always been known to be a really tough, strong-minded guy. And that's about the only person who really has had an impact on me over decades of that type of broadcasting.
All right, guys, got to keep things moving. Speaking of the NBA, Ben Simmons, it's been great to see him looking a little more confident out there. He's had 11, 15, and 20 in his last 3 games. He was 10 of 12 from the field today. Dee, what have you liked? What have you seen that's been different about Ben's game in the last week or so?
Well, it's interesting, Joe. What spurred on this comeback? Was it the fact that the Nets put out leaks saying, look, we're getting tired of this guy. We're getting tired of waiting on him to produce. Or is it just Ben feeling more comfortable within himself, within the Nets organization, understanding what's required of him? Or maybe it was the coaching change to Jacques Vaughn. Maybe the vibe was better for Ben. But I think we're finding, along with another person who's been undergoing a bit of scrutiny, Klay Thompson, who's bounced back this weekend, Shane, talent never leaves. Your mind can let you down, your body can let you down, but that talent is always there. It's just a matter of when it's going to resurface.
Or point 4 for Ben Simmons is the fact that Kyrie was actually out at the same time that Ben Simmons found some form and some confidence and started to be proactive. And, I think maybe it's a mixture of all those things, D, but he's starting to play the basketball that we all know, that I think frustrates not only Australians, but fans across the league, that you've got this unbelievable talent that we know has a huge ceiling, that he's really scratching the surface over the last couple of years. So fingers crossed that this is the start of momentum, that we can see the real Ben Simmons. Guys like Klay Thompson, you go through different patches where you're not playing your best basketball, you're not making the shots that you normally make, and then it's the powerful mind and toughness that gets you through to go, okay, it's time to turn it up, and you start making big shots. But you guys like Steph Curry, and you made the comment off air, D, that Curry was aware that he needed to be able to get Klay Thompson the ball more, and that's what great leaders do. And I know playing with guys like Froling and Sibley, when you're down, that's what your teammates do to help you get going, and I think he's been a huge assist.
Well said.
Beautiful, guys. D, love your work. Thank you so much for that. That is points made thanks to UPCOZ. And don't forget to check out their markets for NBA games of the week. This week it's the Cavs and Hawks, 76ers and Nets. Speaking of Celtics, Mavericks and Spurs and Lakers, some big names in action there. And from an NBL point of view, their game of the week, Friday night, the Taipans and Breakers, which is going to be a cracker. Non-basketball related as well, of course. The World Cup kicked off this morning. Not a great start for the hosts, but the Socceroos have got France on Wednesday, so wish them all the best.
Good luck to him.
Yeah.
And good luck to the King of Brisbane up there, overlooking that beautiful river.
Well, it has been a fun show today. We've got a couple of cheeky bloopers from behind the scenes as well.
The fact I'm going to have no hair by the end of the season, and I'll be
going
going for a polish rather than a cut.
We'll have to get that out at some point. Do you know, since we've mentioned the pen as well at the top of the show, I genuinely had never noticed. It's now like...
Well, I've got it behind closed doors now. Look, just behind. That's just how I roll.
Oh my God.
Get used to it.
I don't know how I'm going to get over it. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. As always, it's been a lot of fun. Thank you to TCL Mobile, 2K23 and UPCOZ. We'll see you next week.
This is a co-production by News Corp Australia and Closer Sports.